for SAUPO Panel 2 on Artificial Intelligence, Technology, and Innovation.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here. I'm standing on this little platform on top of the platform, so I was wondering if this is some type of device, if you talk a little bit too long, or if you hit the end time, does it kind of buzz, right? So if you see me dancing for some reason, that might be the reason. Well, let me say, we're proud sponsors of SAUPO. We've been proud sponsors for a number of years, and the reason we're sponsors is because of the people who are in this room and the connections into Asian businesses. That's so important for the state of Georgia. I have lived in Asia, in Taiwan, in Taipei, and spent time a number of summers in Wuhan. Taiwan. 大家好，很高兴认识你。So know the culture well. Also had conferences. I've sat in Korea, China, Japan, India, or that, and just a great community of people and welcoming people. I always feel somewhat sad when they come to visit us that we don't host them in the same way, but I think this event is one way that we do show our ability to host them. So our presentations today are going to be around AI, but the title's longer, is Artificial Intelligence, Technology and Innovation. So we've got a number of different areas that we can skirt around today. With AI, we want to find out, are we turning into modern day Luddites, Do you like that? You're going to talk about it? But it's funny, whenever there's a new innovation, people always worry about the innovation rather than engaging it. So let me take a few moments and I'll introduce our panelists, and then once I've done a short introduction, then I'll allow them to go come down the line and they can introduce or add into anything that I've missed. So we've got David Kirk here, who's the President and CEO of Moretta Electronics Northeast. He's been in the Atlanta area, I think from 2011, or that. And I think, are you based in Kyoto now?
I'm actually based in Dallas.
Dallas, right? It says Kyoto here as well.
Well, the company is.
The company is, right. I was just wondering. But Moretta is the world's largest manufacturer of ceramic capacitors, producing 100 billion plus pieces per month. And their components and solutions appear in all your electronic devices, smartphones, laptops, and we wouldn't be even videoing this or talking today if it wasn't for Moretta. And Moretta is an innovator in electronics with a philosophy, and I've read a lot of their work with a philosophy contributing to the advancement of society. And I think that's one of the things that really differentiates them. Jessica Cork, I hardly need to introduce. She's here every year, and just wonderful to see her again. Assistant Vice President of Digital Strategy at YKK Corporation of America. Everybody uses probably YKK every day. Jessica is responsible for crafting and implementing the comprehensive digital strategies for YKK America Group Company. Her role encompasses spearheading digital transformation innovations, facilitating the integration of digital endeavors across departments, and some other things. I'm sure she'll share a little bit more. Our next one is Mayor Michael Caldwell. We're pleased to have Michael here, 31st Mayor of Woodstock, Georgia, Managing Partner at Black Airplane, a digital product company. He was previously the youngest legislator in the United States, representing Woodstock for 8 years in the House of Georgia Representatives. He also served on a gubernatorial appointee on the Georgia Technology Authority and the Vice Chairman of the Atlanta Regional Commission. So we appreciate your service to the state and to this community. Finally, we have one of our own, Chris Cornelius, who's currently the Interim Associate Vice President for Innovation and Commercialization at the institution. He did his BS and I think PhD at University of Georgia and Georgia State University. While completing his PhD, he became a co-inventor of a patent that was assigned to GSU, and he served as a technical lead on a NSF I-Core team related to this technology, so he may talk a little bit about I-Core, something I've been involved with for a number of years. He also has, and is a founder of MicroLogic, did I pronounce that correctly?
MicroLogic, yes.
Yeah, good. A spin-out company from KSU that produces hardware and software for specialty mushroom cultivation. So he may talk a little bit about that as well. So I thought with this we should actually, we'll just go down the panel, and if I've missed out on anything, you can feel free to share a little bit more, and maybe start with one question. You know, AI is in the news in this day and age, and I think that many people don't completely understand it. It's a technology that's really been around in some form for at least 70 odd years or so ago. I did a whole pile of coding, I know, in this area about 40, 45 years ago in different areas. So maybe if we start with the first question, I would like, should we embrace, ignore, or resist AI in our daily work and life, and why, and so? That's a long question, isn't it? We can agree on that question for the rest of the time, I thought. Why don't we kick off, and if I've missed out anything important in my introduction, just feel free to add to it. So, Michael, should we just start with you and go down the line?
I'd be happy to. First off, thank you all for having us today. Really an honor to be here with you guys. There's nothing more boring to anyone than hearing their own bio, so I'm sorry you had to hear all of those. I do a couple of things in a couple of different places on the public sector. From the mayor of the city of Woodstock, I'm the vice chairman of the Atlanta Regional Commission. I'm the governor's guy on the Georgia Technology Authority, where we manage enterprise IT data policy and data sales policy for all the agencies and departments here in the state. But on the private sector side, I own a company called Black Airplane that is we build digital products. We build web and mobile applications for some of the largest companies in the world, and a whole lot you haven't heard of. We do a lot of work in the AI innovation space, as well as the preparing for AI space, which I think is really a big piece that we're missing in the American business community right now, is that we're all interested in what AI means, and the answer is we've got a room full of really smart people here, and not one of us are going to be aligned on what that means right now, because we're all figuring it out. And figuring out where the hype curve and the actual innovation curve is right now is one of the most difficult challenges in the AI space. But getting American business ready for AI is amongst the biggest challenges that we face right now. So you can want to implement AI, and you can implement every bolt-on you can find, and every faked out version of GPT-4 into something newer and fancier with lipstick on it onto your company. But if you don't have underlying systems that are automated, legacy systems that are modernized, if you're working on a 15-year-old system that doesn't talk to each other, that doesn't have, it has individual data silos, you're not ready to implement these tools in a real way. So I guess the question being, do we implement, do we embrace, do we hide from it? You can do whatever you want, but if you hide from it, you're going to be irrelevant not in 10 years, but in a year. IBM says that more than 50% of small businesses will have implemented AI into critical business systems within the next 12 calendar months. Again, the question is, what does that mean? So guys, I think we're largely at a point right now in human history, what a time to be alive. Because we are watching the innovation and the adoption curves collide in a real way for the first time in human innovation. Does that make sense to everybody? If you look back to, 1400, we invent the longbow, and it takes 100 years before it gets utilized in warfare. We now invent this tool, and we are already innovating at a rate by which we can't innovate fast enough. So I'll use a public sector example for this. On the Atlanta Regional Commission, we know that by the year 2050, we'll have added the population of Nashville to Metro Atlanta. This is where we gasp and wish that our traffic was better, right? So we're going to dramatically enhance the population of the city. We're planning for that based on the idea that we have a huge amount of people coming both domestically and internationally into this city. Everyone here is staying, thank goodness, because we built a place people want to be. What we're not accounting well for in that is what life expectancy is going to look like in 2050. So when we look at advancement in AI, what we have to recognize as industry, as academia as the public sector is that advancement in AI means advancement in everything, right? So when we talk about advancement in fintech, in infrastructure, in medtech, what happens when you've solved for large percentages of heart attacks before they ever happen, right? You solve for the largest killer of 50% of men, and all of a sudden you've solved for a massive life expectancy issue. Well, what happens when we're not adding the population of Nashville and operating under the same life expectancy we're adding? What happens when that life expectancy of 80 goes to 90 or 100 or 105 in a 10-year period? Well, your social safety networks aren't big enough to catch that, right? We don't have time to adopt the innovations at the pace they're coming. You embrace it, you have to. But the amount of chaos that we're going to watch that comes through this is wild. And again, now you get to measure where am I on the hype and actual innovation curve, right? But we've never had a chaos moment in industry like we're about to endeavor that will surpass all industry boundaries. And in that, what I want this room to hear is there will never have been more singular opportunity in a single decade than we're about to watch in this decade coming. So for the businesses and public sector entities and the academics and the opportunists who are willing to step up and get ahead of this curve, you'll be among the very few who do, but it's in chaos's opportunity. We're about to see more chaos than we've seen in a very long time, and with that we're going to see more opportunity than ever before. So I'm bullish on AI. I think we should be embracing.
Excellent. So you're going to adopt, right?
Well, I'm going to try. We'll see what that means for all of us, and I think it's going to be a changing curve as we go. But I'm on the adoption side.
Okay, Jessica.
Great. Good morning, everyone. And I agree. I'm absolutely very excited about the opportunities. I mean, there is some reason to proceed with caution and just be careful as you're going about. But I'm just see so much potential in this. And for those of you, as the introduction said, I have spoken on these panels for many times, and I'm sorry you have to listen to me yet again if you participated in SAUPO in previous years. However, you may recall from previous years that my title at YKK has changed. I previously was Vice President of Community Engagement and Corporate Communications, and now I'm Vice President of Digital Strategy. That is a new role for me. And you may be wondering, how does the VP of Communications become the VP of Digital Strategy? And the answer to that is a lot of this question really also has to do with how do you get the workforce ready for these massive changes that are coming. And so when I was first given this opportunity, I was quite apprehensive because, I'm a Japanese language major actually, so that is my connection to Asia. So I spent, many years learning Japanese and living in Japan, and that, very easily led into a role in communications where I was very comfortable. But the thing is that I'm also very excited about new technology, and I guess I was just an early adopter in my individual role at YKK. I'm always, whenever Microsoft comes out with some new button, and I'm the first one to push and then run around the office telling everybody, hey, did you see what you can do to speed up your work? But one thing that I want to talk about, there's two things. One thing is it's critically important that as we start rolling out these new tools, and there's all these new innovations coming every day, especially within an office setting. I'm going to speak primarily about the office setting today. We have a lot of things going on in the factory as well, but there are definitely people on the panel who can talk about that a lot better than I can. But I'm really focusing on the office because we have a lot of employees at YKK may have been working there 20 years, 30 years, and all of this is very scary to them. So these new chatbots and tools, and they don't know how to use them, they're not sure what they can do, and I'm realizing as I'm starting to talk to my colleagues, many of them haven't even tried it, which is shocking to me, because I was I think I was using ChatGPT a month after it came out. What does this do? And I was like, oh my gosh, and then, and a lot of my colleagues are just not there, and so I'm realizing that we need to kind of back up, and we need to do a lot of training, and we need to do it in a way that they can understand. So that's why this role has been given to me and not to our IT department. well, oftentimes the IT department, when they explain things, it's way too technical and just tends to intimidate our employees even more. And beyond that, sometimes even our IT team is not really aware. They're doing other things within the company. They don't really know what ChatGPT can do. So I'm finding myself in this very, odd situation of everyone's learning, as you said. One comment I do want to make, though, for there's many people in this room who are studying other languages or who may be a non-native speaker of English themselves, and I am using this technology absolutely every day, also for communication in different languages. So as I said, I'm bilingual Japanese and English, but in our office we also use Spanish, Portuguese, and French frequently because my office is the headquarters for the Americas group. So we have to put out so many communications in all these languages. And I will say what I'm most excited about, just personally, about AI is that I think it is a great equalizer for people who have to communicate in different languages. I have been, it used to be like Google, you use Google Translate. I want to say even as recently as 3 years ago for Japanese and English, pretty much. It's just garbage. I mean, it was okay, but it just really, it's not great. You could use it to look up some words, but what it put out. And then we started using DeepL, for those of you that are familiar with that, and past couple of years, better and better. And now, ChatGPT can write the whole email for me in Japanese, and making me quite lazy, but on the other hand, super productive. Because I can read it and I can just check it, and I'm like, it gets all the polite Japanese and the things that take a long time to write. But also, I have a colleague, so one of the people who reports to me is actually in charge of our digital transformation, and from the technical side. He is in IT. And he is a native of Colombia, so Spanish speaker. But sometimes he struggles with communicating across the organization because he's writing, emails and things in Spanish, and in English, but it's not native, and it's sometimes just hard to read because there's errors or difficulty communicating. And we recently have been working together to have him use these tools to improve his writing in English, and the communication for him has just gotten so much better. I would say just within the past 2 months of getting more momentum on projects and things, just because it's helping him to communicate. Things are able to be bulleted and clear grammar, and absolutely a great, as I said, great equalizer for him. So I will kind of leave my comments there at the moment, but I just am very excited about all of the possibilities for this technology, and language, I think, is just one of them.
Thank you. David.
Very good. Good morning, everybody. My company is Murata Electronics. In Japan, it's a Murata manufacturing company. Probably one of these very large companies you will have never heard of. Depending on the exchange rates, somewhere between $15 to $18 billion. We actually price our products by the thousands, because if we priced it per piece, there isn't enough decimal places after the decimal point. There are fractions. But we're innovators in electronics. We make Wi-Fi, Bluetooth modules, power supplies, a number of other electronic components as well. As Ian said, we contribute to the advancement of society, so that's our philosophy, our chasse. And that's built into all of the products and the innovations that we actually do. So maybe as we think about that, our products are in everything, and I mean everything electronic. You've pushed the button on your key fob to start the car today, that was us. You've got tire pressure monitoring, that's us. You've got your smartphone, you've got numbers of things, everything electronic, we're in it. And so, not going to get into all the details of the business and the innovation, but through that, I think it was maybe Bill Strang was here early this morning, and he talked about the Toto toilets. They're very electronic. But he mentioned to how many people have actually used them, and maybe not too many here have seen them. But if you travel around the world, you'll see a lot of those types of innovations, those types of technologies. But when I think about AI, and maybe I'll ask you a question, how many of you have one of these? In some form, right? Maybe not the one with the apple on it, one with the orange, one with the whatever. Okay, you are already actively participating in AI, okay? You open Google Maps, you punch in where you want to go, and they tell you, right, if it's Atlanta, there's a 12-minute delay. Okay, how do you think they know there's a 12-minute delay? Because you're part of that delay, and that delay data, it took 13 minutes, it didn't take 12, or it's growing to 20. You're feeding the beast, okay? You open the Weather Channel, you're supporting that. So AI for us is this massive amount of data. And what are you going to do with the data? And so the change and the innovation for us then is the technology and the capability to process that data. Part of the issues that we've all had in the past is we've had so much data we didn't know what to do with it, we couldn't manage it. And so AI is giving you that chance to process the data. And the chat GPTs and the emails and things like that, those are some of the end uses out there. But really it's that fantastic data that they have. And you know, when you visit a site, you look at a car, the next minute that car's in your Facebook feed, it's in your Instagram feed, it's, you know, that's AI, that's the beast. So, so when I think about the question there is you embrace it, ignore it, you're already in it, you know. So what are we going to actually do with that? How are you going to, you know, benefit from that? And I think there's a lot of good in there. Michael talked a little bit about the medical side of things. Medical has been very, very far behind, and the advancements there. We've got implants now with our technology in it, and they can actually tell if you're just laying down for a nap, or do they need to actually zap you with your pacemaker defibrillator that's embedded in you, those types of things. So for us, it's really more of, you know, how are we going to innovate, because the amount of data that's being generated is so vast, and the data centers and the energy efficiency of those data centers is not good. It would actually consume all the energy in the world right now if we actually built out all the data centers. So kind of tying back to the panel this morning about sustainability, if you have some of these data centers and you wonder why they're building them in Iceland or Greenland or something like that, it's because they generate so much heat. So these are some of the technologies and innovations that we need in AI. So maybe I'll just stop at that point, but I think you're already both feet in it, is the way I'd say as far as AI is concerned.
Yeah. Chris?
Thank you very much. So happy to be here. Within my capacity at KSU, I manage our tech transfer office, our business incubator. So I'm really focused about innovation at the wellspring, right? So how do you take research productivity out of an academic setting and turn that into a commercial reality? And of course, as you can imagine, AI is a very hot topic across this, and to echo sort of what you've heard from all these panelists, but perhaps with a little bit of a sci-fi twist to it, resistance is futile, I would say. So we are in it. And also I think it's very poignant what David just mentioned, that data is the currency of innovation. And AI really is the mechanism by which we maximize our understanding, our utilization of data, which then fosters new innovation. It actually just accelerates things that are already occurring, but at a pace that humans cannot do individually. So we create tools, right? That's what we are, right? As a species, we're tool makers. And AI is another manifestation of what we do to make our lives easier and more efficient. So within the context of university and my role here, what's really interesting to me is we're seeing sort of a shift in the way we think about intellectual property, for example. There's one jurisdiction globally that currently permits AI to be an inventor on a patent. It cannot be a sole inventor, there has to also be a human co-inventor, but that is South Africa, right? So in every other jurisdiction, AI is not able to be listed as an inventor. In fact, it's considered a work for hire. So similarly, if you were to contract a photographer for your wedding, right, they would take the photos, but that copyright would be transferable to you because you employed them to do it. That's how U.S. Patent and Trademark Office is currently interpreting AI-generated works, right? So if you're the prompt, then if you generate the prompt, you therefore have that copyright in that setting. However, there's been no precedent. There's no case precedent to date, right? So we know there's some pretty massive trials or suits going on right now with OpenAI, some challenges to training data. As these are resolved, this is going to be really critical to understanding how we maximize AI, how do we develop AI, and what it means within the context of intellectual property framework and commercialization rights. And so a little bit of it's the Wild West, right? And so it's who can be a first actor, who can move quickly and capture some market space. But as we learn more about implications within the framework of intellectual property development, tech transfer, and business operations, I think we're going to continue to evolve. But ultimately, AI is here to stay. It's a tool, and I encourage everybody to utilize every tool they can to make their work more productive and their lives more efficient.
So what I heard from the panel today is that they're adopting it. We're already in it. We don't have to adopt it. It's already there. And it's really a question of how do we engage. So maybe we can talk a little bit more about some of the technologies in and around what you're currently doing in your company, either to engage more fully with AI or in other areas. So we'll start with. Who do we start with? Jessica, and then we'll do a loop-de-loop.
Yeah, for us, what has changed? I mean, I feel like everything has changed, at least from my role and my perspective. We're hearing a lot more, and and I'm going back to my background here, but I think the value of like critical thinking too is really going. It's always been valuable, but I think it's going to become more and more important to make sure that we're hiring into our organizations people who are not only able to use these tools, but to understand, when you get the results, that whatever you put into the AIs, that you're able to discern whether is that good, is it valuable, is it completely incorrect, is it, did it just fabricate something? And that's one really big concern that I have as well, watching our employees starting to use this new technology, is it's not necessarily everyone who has those skills to be able to tell the difference, and making sure to educate them about that. But in terms of the positive sides, I mean, I think one thing that I'm starting to hear a lot as I'm reading this concept of, well, and as I mentioned, like Microsoft is using this word co-pilot, and I've heard, we used a consultant for some of our activities at YKK, and he was using the word digital centaur. Like, it's going to be more and more important for employees to develop the skills to use this technology as an assistant, a co-pilot, or like digital centaur means like someone who can both use the machine but also has, they're retaining their human capabilities. And so I think, we started things like embedding, questions about technology and technology use into all of the interviews that we're doing for, the HR to see what the digital skills of a person is, even if they're being hired, for example, for an HR role, which is a question that we never would have asked before. But beyond that, I mean, I'm even thinking, so you just asked about, like, even since the pandemic, before the pandemic, if I wanted to have a meeting with Japan, right, which basically never happens, because what you would have to do is to physically go to the office at 9 o'clock at night. I remember being the only person still in the office at 9 o'clock at night. Cleaning staff is like behind me. Turn on the Polycom machine, which needed this really complex like room reservation system, and I could never get the thing to work. I was always nervous, like when I was alone and I didn't have the IT staff to like connect the thing. And that was how we did meetings with Japan. I mean, 2019, that is how we did meetings with Japan. At these days, of course, just like everyone else, you're on a Zoom or Teams meetings in seconds. and you're using that technology, and so I can connect from my living room, my bedroom in my pajamas, and I can have dinner with my family and then go and have a global meeting. But I talked a little bit before about language, but I'll give you an example. So we went from like the Polycom to Teams to now with Microsoft Copilot. A couple weeks ago, I was in a meeting where I had to participate. It was like a 4-hour meeting on IT in Japanese. Again, my Japanese is pretty good, but it's about IT stuff. Plus, it was the middle of the night, and we can talk about mental health a little bit too. It was middle of the night. The meeting was from 11 p.m. until 4 a.m., and I had to listen to this meeting. And so I'm exhausted. I'm listening to this all in Japanese. Well, Copilot in Microsoft has this technology where they will, you can get real-time subtitling in the meeting, right? So I can watch it in English. I can push a button, it will translate all of the slides into English for me. But on top of that, I can click a button inside of Copilot and it will summarize the meeting for me, the key points in English. I asked it in English, summarize what was just said. They're speaking in Japanese, English summary, and it was 90% accurate. So again, great equalizer for someone who's not a native speaker. Probably if I had participated in a meeting like that before with none of these tools, it's very hard for me to say something because I'm also not entirely sure I understood everything that was being said, so I tend to be more quiet. Now with these tools, I'm able to feel like I can participate on equal footing with the native Japanese speakers because I have this ability to double check that I understood what was going on. So like I said, for me, that's just a game changer. And it is for everyone within our organization who is communicating different languages. We're in 72 countries. I mean, we have meetings where we have people that speak, maybe speaking 10 languages in the meeting, but we're all communicating in English. But it's so hard for all of those people to they're at all different levels of English language ability, and so now these tools are making that much more possible. However, I'm not in support of 11 p.m. until 3 a.m. meetings. I kind of don't like that we have this technology that allows us to do that sort of thing.
So I knew when I lived out there, I had 2 6 to 7 hour days, so you would have your normal work day in America and then your work day out there. So
Yes.
I think many of the people in this room understand that. Yeah, David.
Yeah, I can relate to everything that Jessica actually said. I became an officer of the parent company, and so I get to attend these meetings. Pre-COVID, I could never have attended them. Yes, I was on the phone or that type of thing, but now, as she mentioned, you just go down to the bottom, you pick which language you want to listen to it in. Really fantastic. Copilot is, you can make it so that it's internal, so that you don't expose your data to the internet. And so that's one of the things that we are obviously studying very hard. We don't want our intellectual property to escape. There's very famous stories of engineers from a cell phone company that their latest software was checked using ChatGPT until it was released to everybody. But that's just some internal things, and so we used it though just recently. I write a blog internally, and I write it and try to make it a little bit more personal. It's not all about business, but we use Copilot to write my blog on AI, and it was good. It was very consultant-like, but it was not what I would have actually written about AI, because I would have actually tied it closer to our business, our customers, some of the products that we have, those types of things. And maybe, I guess, back to what Ian was saying here, maybe a little bit more relatable. So, but very, very powerful tools for sure. And, a big difference from pre-pandemic. So the pandemic seemed to accelerate so many of these things. And one of the areas that the state of Georgia is very interested in, obviously, is mobility. And there's been a huge acceleration in the mobility space, the automotive space, we call it mobility. But how many cameras are on that car now? How many sensors? How close are you going to get to autonomous driving vehicles? And then you need the infrastructure at the street signs and a number of different things. So right now, EV's got a little bit of a hiccup. I would almost tie it back to the previous presentation. They've got, I call it greenflation, where there's a sticker shock for the cost of an EV, the lack of infrastructure for the EV, but I think as the panel was saying earlier, they just got to fight through some of those things, but right now it's a little bit challenging. So, but that opportunity, the acceleration of that, I believe, came out of the pandemic, and again, it's just massive amounts of data that we've got to be able to process so that that vehicle can drive by itself. So, pandemic changed a lot of things, for good.
Yeah, echo that. I think the maxim that necessity is the mother of invention, and in this case innovation, really holds true. And perhaps all of these tools would have manifest no matter what, but I think the pandemic was an accelerator as every part of life, right? Business, a university, we all had to adapt to a new reality. And so once again, we leveraged tools to navigate that challenging time. And then the functionality, the convenience lasts beyond the necessity, right? So now we have a new data set, right, that we're working from, a new reality. I do want to touch on one thing as a reminder, and I tell this to my students all the time, on what David said. If you're using ChatGPT, everything you put into it, then it's using it to learn, right? So within a commercial setting, you do want to be very careful to have enterprise solutions where you can contain your information. This is really critical, and I think a lot of users don't quite understand sort of the way that it's functioning in a larger set. So it's really critical that we understand those within the university, right? So what's sort of an ironic dichotomy of academia is that on the research side, we're the source of innovations and we're the pipeline of talent, but we do business not at the speed of business, right? And there's always a challenge in working with a university, mostly through the administrative challenges of a large state bureaucracy. What we're looking at right now, even at KSU, is how do we integrate these tools, similar to what you're hearing from my colleagues within the corporate setting, into academia to improve our functionality, right? And so while a large state institution is historically resistant to change, it is inevitable that we must adapt to this new reality. And so just this week, I saw an article where OpenAI has partnered with Arizona State University and really what I think is going to set the new tone, where these large companies with their sort of proprietary AI platforms are working with specific institutions to integrate solutions internally, right? So how can this improve our processes with sponsored programs? How can it improve our technology transfer? How can it help us with student recruitment and retention, right? We have all of these actual challenges within the academy that AI can help us solve, right? And it's about the way in which we partner to integrate solutions that can be meaningful, and we manage our data, right? So that's the other thing that we really need to think about. So a lot of considerations, but we certainly, from looking back, sitting here today, the world is a different place than it was in 2019. And although it was a challenging experience for us to traverse, I think there have been some positive gains, and I think our adoption of technology and utilization to connect the world more completely is one of those positive outcomes.
Thank you. Michael. So what's happening at the state level? What's the discussions and?
Interesting. So anybody here surprised that the pandemic changed everything? It changed that in the public sector, it changed the private sector, and I think the general theme to what we're talking about today being that it created a global marketplace in a way that we thought we were existing in a global marketplace in 2019, and we hadn't seen anything yet, right? I think that's still true today. A huge piece of what that transformed, I'll say it first on the private sector, that I know we're all familiar with. Very much like you said before, you couldn't have been at these kinds of things. Now this concept of remote work stopped being so anathema, and that, guys, was half a technological solution. It was half just a cultural shift as well. But as in all things, we pretend that things are either all good or all bad, and they're all just a shade of gray, right? Anybody here see that, yesterday or this week, the largest office building in St. Louis that sold 5 years ago for $300 million, sold for $3.5 million. We are about to watch a massive economic shift in what real estate looks like, and we've had one of those before, and it didn't look great. We are still existing in the echoes of what that change coming from the pandemic looks like, not just technologically. But I'll tell you, from a technological standpoint, I think one of the, if we were to try to find a silver lining to the catastrophe that was 2020 in the form of the pandemic, it's a beautiful example of the spirit of human ingenuity and innovation, that we were able to take that and genuinely transform the marketplace into a global marketplace. But it creates really unique challenges for businesses all over the market that we now compete with each other in ways we didn't before, right? So you have small software companies competing with Google for talent now in a way that they did, right? That changes the marketplace in many ways, and it's forced all of us as employees to start asking ourselves, what is it we're really looking for in an employer? What are we looking for in an occupation? I think we're all still learning what that means today. From a public sector standpoint, there are, as bullish as I am on what this means for the future in both the public and private sectors, there are major privacy concerns, not just in the private sector for intellectual property, but for the public sector who doesn't own any of the data, right? Anytime the public sector is dealing with data, it is yours by right. And yet we have to interact with that and figure out how to manage it well and govern it well in what is an infinitely changing landscape. And so you're watching large numbers of public sector entities out there adopting policies that bluntly are irrelevant a week and a half after they're adopted, because again, that innovation and adoption curve are applying. So I can speak to the Georgia Technology Authority right now. I think it's taking a very rational actor approach. They're taking a three-pronged approach. They are going after, number one, they're conducting a statewide inventory audit. So right now the challenge is, like we talked about, it doesn't take a corporate top-level down decision to start utilizing tools like these anymore. These are consumer-level decisions. This is democratized technology. Anybody can start implementing it and using it tomorrow, whether or not you intended for your employees to start using it tomorrow, right? And so figuring out what tools are even being used throughout state agencies and departments, and most importantly and critically within that inventory, how are they being used? Are they being used to provide information and data sets and act as a co-pilot to those employees, or are they making decisions on behalf of the public as an artificially intelligent decision maker that no one elected or appointed or hired, right? Those are important questions they have to get answered. So just getting our arms around what is the inventory of tool sets being used today in the public space in this state. Number two, establishing not necessarily a policy book, but an ethics playbook for this, right? So this really is a driver back for all of us as people, especially in the public sector, to what are first principles here, right? As we think about how we use these tools, why do we use them? Why would we be using them? What do we prize? Do we prize the individual's data or convenience more? I hope we know the answer to those questions, right? But ensuring that we have those written down and we're agreed to, and that we're training our employees on how to think about them, because telling them how to use these tools becomes irrelevant very quickly as the tools change, right? And the tools are changing faster than we can keep up. But telling them how to think about how to use these tools is a very different equation that we can employ well. And then lastly, just establishing a statewide commission on this. They're trying to really get people from each space in state government into a committee to sit and talk about what tools they're encountering on a day-to-day basis so that we can try to do our best to keep up with this as it evolves. I think these are the kinds of actions that not just the public sector, but the private sector is going to have to be doing. This is something we don't get to take our eye off any more than we can technology in general or the marketplace in general or anything that we do. It's changing too fast. That is both a blessing and a curse. It creates a lot of opportunity, but it means that taking a break is no longer an option. Unfortunately, the night shifts might be here to stay. And so it's a wildly exciting chapter, but this is going to take discipline. But I guess if I were going to throw one last thought in here, guys, for every challenge we have with this, let's remember to keep them in context. What I mean by that is I got to go out, Stripe, the payments processor, hosted a conference last May, and Sam Altman was the keynote, and it was about 3 months after they launched GPT-4. And I mean, what would you give to go see Steve Jobs speak 3 months after they launched the iPhone, right? So you had to go. And so he did an hour-long fireside chat. One of the points he made that I thought was really fascinating to me was we hold technology to a significantly higher standard than we hold human beings.
And my question to you guys is about the development of AI and how you, just like the where it can go and the concerns about the use of it or the misuse of it. As we know, like the development is quick. You guys said that, within a year it can be, normalized, or it's being normalized currently. And I just am wondering your concerns about the misuse of the technology.
And maybe we can just add a little bit, and what do you want to see from our students when they graduate, if you weave that into this type of question as well? David, do you want to start? We can just...
Yeah, that's a very good question. From our viewpoint, the AI is spreading, and I think where we're, I shouldn't say concerned, but where we really see some opportunities is as AI goes out to what we would actually call the edge. So you actually really start to have AI on your phone, and it gives you much greater, so you're not sitting there with a very powerful computer or connection, that type of thing. And so that poses a whole lot of different opportunities, challenges. Part of it, again, would be maybe, for example, like the communications network. As we know, we've gone from 3G to 5G. Now there's 6G coming. What's 6G going to do? So there's data processing capability, the connection capability, and then what are you going to do with it at the edge? But you could imagine there somebody's actually doing the translations real time right there on your phone, some of that type of stuff. So I don't say that it's good or bad, but those are kind of some of the things that we're thinking of as AI goes out to what we, in terminology, call the edge.
I also just want to add to it. I'm sorry. Can I add to my question as well? I was thinking more.
Keep going.
I was thinking more with the videos and how you can develop a moving picture of someone who's actually not there. I've seen conversations about that and the concerns regarding that as well.
So you're talking about deep fake
Yeah,
type
sort of.
applications? Yeah, I mean, I think we've all seen sort of the clip of President Obama giving, remarks that clearly are not his remarks and things like that people have used the deepfake for. I think it's an interesting challenge. There is a lot of innovation going on right now in the AI audit space, the ability to understand products that are generated by AI so that there's an ability to resolve these. And I imagine that many of the large reputable companies that are developing these tools are going to implement some sort of validation process, right? I also think that whenever you see really rapid innovation in a space, regulation is slow to catch up to it. It does catch up to it, right? So there is some sort of leveling out in that curve, and we will see sort of processes by which we are ensuring that data security is managed, but there will be some gap in sort of when we catch up to the technology. But those tools are being developed. As soon as there is an opportunity, this is across human history of technology, where technology advances and is used for some sort of malice, you do see a counterbalance, right? So human innovation is also leveraged to correct for that, right? And I think that's why, regardless of what our technology is and allows us to do, centering in on ethical principles, technology doesn't change human ethics, right? It's tools. And so as long as we stay anchored in how we leverage technology within the context of our ethical considerations, I think we'll see a similar sort of transition that we've seen with other technologies in the past.
Yes, my name is Janet Jones. First of all, thank you for being here. Wonderful conversation, love this. My question is, how are you using AI in hiring, recruitment, and retention? And do you have any tips or tricks, any systems, processes, anything that's working for you on the hiring side?
I'll tell you, this is a scary one. So inherently, when we talk about the risks that come with AI, one of the things that I'm going to say the risk and then try to immediately invalidate it. One of the inherent risks is that the systems are only as good as the information you put in, and that information comes with all of the biases that are plugged in with it, right? So we have to talk about the inherent biases that get implemented into these tools. I think it was Amazon had a great example of they were utilizing AI filtering in their recruiting efforts, and it inherently pushed out, it terminated any applications from graduates of women's colleges. Not because anybody had told it to, but because they didn't have any graduates of women's colleges working within the teams that they were hiring for at that point. the system's not asking a moral question, right? It's just asking, do I see a pattern here? Well, I don't see those people here. That must not be what they're looking to hire. So we have to figure out ways to correct for that and do it well, which really comes back to, are these systems making decisions, or are they providing information that people can make decisions off of? I don't know how the state is utilizing. I hope that there's not massive utilization of those tools in recruiting subsets yet. I know that there are huge advancements in this. I heard about a firm just about a week ago that's working on building out a tool set. It's utilizing LinkedIn. It's searching the job listings on LinkedIn. It is automatically searching for candidates that meet those and automatically plugging those candidates to try to get them interested in those roles without having been hired by the companies, listing those roles and then going back and offering those candidates back to the company as a recruiting style service. That raises all kinds of interesting questions about where this is going, right? Because what happens not when you're getting a job offer every day, but when you're getting the perfect job offer that already knows what you're looking for because it knows you better than you know you, and it's offering all of the benefits and salary points exactly like you want, and you see one of those every day on the day. And the company's seeing the same thing with candidates every day on the day. It starts changing how we think about what W-2 employment looks like. We really do get into a gig economy. I think it's one of the most interesting fields for
But it sounds
AI.
like now you're getting more of the same, because if you have that profile and it's finding that exact match, that same skill set, the same person, the same, so.
Yes, except that I would argue, I think as we watch this is where human emotion and decision-making plugs in, right? The grass is always greener is a statement we all understand because the grass always feels greener. I think utilizing human emotion and the desire for change is what's going to drive that constant shift over. And it will also drive, it'll drive normalization in pricing, but it's going to drive a constant turnover in that headcount as well. I don't know. I think we're going to see a massive transition in what human resources looks like.
And I was wondering, kind of combining the last panel and this one a little bit, with the quick advancements in AI and their the large data centers and analytical tools that they use with power consumption, how does that affect sustainability, and how are we looking to improve that?
I think right now the acceleration of the chips, I'm sure many people wish they had some NVIDIA stock a few years ago, but companies like that, the computing power, the requirements of the data centers, and so maybe as I mentioned, if in fact full AI data centers were online to support the amount of data that we actually want or need, right now there isn't enough power generated in the world to support them. And so when you think about that, what kind of advancements, what kind of improvements could we make in the power supplies type, for us, products that we would supply to that? The temperatures in those data centers are amazing, so that's some other innovative opportunities as well. But I would say it is the counter to the panel that we just actually had, what those data centers are doing. So that's why they're looking to make some of those data centers in, Nordic countries, things like that, to try and balance some of that with natural. But truly, it is a challenge to that whole sustainability is what's happening there. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Sha Huang, and I work as associate professor of Chinese in the Department of World Languages and Culture, and I am also directing Asian Studies program here. So I'm very excited about new technology of AI, but I also wonder, like, as a professor, as a teacher and educator in the class, especially we're focusing on languages and culture, and Jessica mentioned that how AI technology can change the whole field. What can we do to prepare our students better for the world in the future, near future, I would say. It's coming, it's already here, so there's no way to resist it. I think the only way is to embrace it and take the opportunities. So how can we get ready, and how can we get our students ready for that? Thank you.
Yeah, Jessica.
Okay, I'll weigh in on that. So I studied Japanese in the era where it was extremely difficult to use Japanese on a computer. I had to go and buy a computer in Tokyo in cash. And on the one hand, I'm very envious of all of the students today because they have this technology at their fingertips. You can put, Google Translate on your phone, and it's going to get the reading right there. It scans it. I talked about my use of ChatGPT at work to write emails in Japanese, but on the other hand, I personally would not trade my experience for anything. I think that my ability to be able to read Japanese and to speak Japanese, and even to be able to take what is generated by something like ChatGPT and read it and tell whether it's correct or not, has everything to do with the fact that I had to learn Japanese in that very slow and painful way, because as you're spending the 20 minutes looking up the character, you are like really remembering that character. So what I would be communicating to your students is that, what is your point of being in the university and studying this language? Is it really just to quickly do your homework using technology and get an A because it's written perfectly but it's not written by you? Or is it to really learn it and to really learn something for yourself? And so I would advocate to them, sometimes you need to go back to the very old school way to make sure that you're really learning this. You can use the tools to help you, but you're doing yourself a disservice if you're over-reliant upon the tools.